Welcome to the Hey Docs podcast with your host, Jill Allen. Today, we have a returning guest, Dr. Robert Trujillo, joining us on the show. Last episode, we learned all about his company, Orthovated, and how he helps practices with clinical onboarding. And on this episode, we're focusing on another passion of his, coaching and mental health. There's a lot to unpack, so let's get into it. By now, we all know I talk to a lot of doctors and give advice to practices in every stage of their life cycle. And one question my docs ask all the time is, who do you recommend for marketing to attract more new patients from the internet? My answer? Easy. I have been recommending Mary Kay Miller and her team at Kaleidoscope for the better part of a decade. Why? They are thorough, professional, and transparent. Kaleidoscope Digital Marketing is who you want to talk to because they understand how to market in the orthodontic world and they offer tools that are affordable and easy to use. I'm telling you, if you're looking to step up your digital presence, Kaleidoscope should be your first call. Go to contactkl.com to request your free digital marketing consultation. That's contactkl.com. Robert, I am so excited to have you on the show again. Thanks for being here.
Oh, yes. Good morning. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yeah. So I know probably a lot of people listen to our first episode and know about you now, but in the event that somebody maybe didn't catch our first episode with you, would you mind just giving us a quick little intro onto who you are, what you're doing in our orthodontic industry, and what your mission is as beyond being an orthodontist?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm Robert Trujillo. I've been in practice as an orthodontist for 10 years. I'm a father. I have two daughters, 7 and 10, and my wife of almost going on 20 years, which is crazy how fast time's gone by.
Yes.
Avid hiker. I love the outdoors and hiking and just being in nature. I'm an astrophotographer. That's something I like to do is one of my favorite passions. And I really have always been really drawn to like psychology and the psychology of behavior and behavior change and just creating our best life. And my mission really from that has been really to help 10 million people to create the life that they really want for themselves. So that's really my overall mission outside of orthodontics. And I created a business called Ortho Life Coach. It's not just for orthodontists. It was more really about orthodontists correcting malocclusions. Of course, I'm a giant nerd. I created the malocclusions of life. We have our class 1, class 2, division 2 life. What kind of things can we do and systems can we use to start to realign our life and create like a good foundation for a healthy life where we can achieve our goals?
I love it. And I know you talked to us a little bit about Orthovated on the last podcast. And to know now that you're also doing this, what a passion you have for really trying to get out there and help not only some of the systems within our industry, but also the doctors within our industry. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today, because I talk with doctors all the time. I've been in this industry for over 30 years now, and you can't help do consulting and not talk about, when I'm talking one-on-one with my doctors, what are you wanting out of this? Especially when I'm talking to startups. Why are you getting into this? What are you wanting out of this? What are your goals? And unfortunately, I also talk to a lot of doctors who've been doing it for a while and just get to this point where they are so burnt out and they are just feeling, this was what I went to school for. I did all this work. I actually just talked to a doctor this weekend and we were having a pretty in-depth conversation, and sometimes just hitting this wall, and you feel like, is this all there is? Like, I feel like I don't have this balance. Not that we can ever really have balance. I do feel like some of us just really get to this point where it's all work and you're like, I don't have time for anything else, which I should have time for. So I'm wondering if you could just talk to us about that, because I know this is something that you feel pretty passionate about and helping doctors a little bit with, in that struggle for the elusive work-life balance.
Yeah, no, that is such an important question. And first, I just want to acknowledge that burnout is like, it's real. And it is one of the most terrible, like hard things to go through, one of the most challenging things we can go through. And if we're really in the full state of burnout, it can feel almost impossible to get out of that at times. And work-life balance, so many people think that it's, oh, it's not real, it's not this, it's not that. But I do think that we still need to show up for ourselves and put an effort into restoring
Mm-hmm.
balance in our life. Just
Mm-hmm.
because we might believe that something's impossible to balance doesn't mean we just give ourselves permission to ignore other areas of our lives. And I like to call it work-life oscillation, because we really are like oscillating between different important areas of our life, like focusing on work and on the connection with our team, perhaps. And then the next week, really focusing on our marriage, dedicating some chunks of time for that, and really oscillating between the things so that we can overall score ourselves in different areas of our life. So I think one of the first things we can do to really get through this emotion of burnout, or to start to restore work-life balance in our life, the first thing we can do that's really important is to get a bird's eye view of what's going on in your life. If we step back and we do a whole life audit of all of the 8 main areas of our life, and those might be like your physical environment, like your house or your garage or your bedroom, the organization of it.
Mm-hmm.
It might be your business and your career. It would be maybe your finances could be one area that you would score and evaluate and audit. Your relationships, your romance, your fun and recreation, all of these things, we need to go through and ask ourselves honestly, like, where am I in this area out of 1 to 10? I'm a 5. Like, why am I at a 5 there? What is going on? What is causing me to score myself a 5? And then going through and ranking each of those areas of our lives is going to give us like a really powerful overview of the areas in our lives that actually need our attention most. And that's going to help us like know where we need to focus our
Mm-hmm.
energy. And then what we could do next is rank, I'm a 5, where would I like to be? Like, for me to like feel like I'm getting some balance back in my life, like what does this number need to be? Now, it doesn't need to be a 10 in every area.
Sure.
You don't have to be like, I want to be a 10 in every single category. Sometimes it's not as important to have our personal environment be a 10 where
Mm-hmm.
everything's like immaculately like organized or whatnot. But really what it is for you and why you scored yourself that way, what would have to happen to achieve that score, all of those things, and getting an idea of what the difference is. So if you score like you want to be a 9, but you're a 2, that's a discrepancy or a difference of 7. So that's a priority number 7. Whereas if the difference is a 7 and a 9, that's a 2. So when it comes to solving our work-life balance and our burnout and like getting to the root of it, we really need to know where to focus first. So by picking like the biggest discrepancy or the biggest priority, that's going to help us know where to start. I think that so many people, high achievers especially, like we're so good at accomplishing so much that we try to do it all at once, and it becomes basically overwhelming and impossible. And it's, if you were carving a statue, you'd have to visualize what it's going to look like first. You need
Mm-hmm.
clarity of what you're making. You can't just blindly chip away at it. But you would also start on maybe the hand, and you would start to take shape, and then you'd maybe work on the arm, and then you might move over to the ear or whatever. And in life, we have to do that too. We can't just fix everything all at once. And just
Mm-hmm.
like building a house, like we need to have a plan. Like you can't build a house by going in any order you want. You can't start with
Mm-hmm.
the roof and then do the foundation. So by knowing like our priority scores and knowing like this area needs my attention the most, maybe it's not the most important, but this is the biggest discrepancy. Like I need to fix that first, because once I fix that, all other areas almost like elevate on their own with that as well.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there. And as you were saying that, the point that stuck out to me is that priority point. And I've never thought about, sometimes we just get in the habit of thinking, oh, I just need to fix this. And it can feel so overwhelming at times. I joke sometimes when I just have a day where I may be seemingly failing at a lot, and I say to myself, I'm really winning today. And really, I think trying to give ourselves a little bit of grace. And as you said, especially as high achievers, and we're trying to, for so many of you out there listening, you're trying to be this great business owner. You're trying to be there for your team. You're trying to be there for your family, and trying to find, identify where is the priority of where I work. And I love that you're talking about bringing this back to, it's not just work or family or spiritual walk or health or this. It's this wheel that we have to look at and try and do our best to identify the areas there. Would you agree with kind of what I'm saying there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's not a mathematical equation we're solving. It's not balancing like Jenga. There is no perfect way to do it. And there's a really powerful story I'd heard somewhere years ago. It's like an old Zen tradition where people would get up every day. You may have heard this, and they paint a circle every
I
day.
have
Like
not.
they paint like the perfect circle, but the reality is no circle is perfect. Even in modern science, like it's impossible to make a perfect circle. It's just the nature of like pi, basically. And no matter how hard you try, if you zoom in close enough, like it's never a perfect circle. But you get up every day knowing it's not possible for me to draw this perfect circle, but I'm going to try my best anyway. And I'm going to literally try, which is hard to do because it's never going to be perfect. Really applies to this circle of life or the wheel of life that we're talking about, like going in every day and really like making an effort on those areas, even knowing that it's not going to be perfect. And that's really hard
Hmm.
for perfectionists to do that, to
Yes.
have purpose, to feel like, is this it? Is this all it is? That's a real
Hmm.
feeling. And I felt that way before too. But I think remembering, no, we create our own passion. We create our things that we're passionate about through action and through
Hmm.
doing, rather than just waiting for it to strike you.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not exactly sure how this correlates, but I think about, as you are saying that, in relationship to what I see so many of my doctors doing is sometimes they correlate happiness or success with these really big, high goals or big aspirations. And sometimes in talking to them, I can't help but think, number one, is this your goal or aspiration, or is this maybe somebody else's, or the pressure that you feel just from within our own industry? Oh, if you don't have 6 practices, you're a nobody. Or if you don't have a practice that's a 4 billion plus practice, you're whatever that is. But I just got to think that there are times, and I try and talk to my docs about this a little bit, like everybody has to understand their own why and their own enough. But does there come a point when you're talking with docs, or maybe you're counseling with them a little bit, where you just have to be like, when is too much? Or when is that goal too big? Or when do we actually need to, I don't know, bring ourselves back into check?
Yeah. No, that's a really powerful question as well, because I think that's a common issue. I think that stepping back to the exercise we just talked about, like grading yourself in each area of your life. If you're a 5 and you want to be a 10, so that difference is actually in psychology what we would call the reality gap. So a reality gap is the life you're living right now, really in reality, compared to the expectation of the life you want to be at or where you
Hmm.
want to be. So that difference is known as the reality gap. And having a really large reality gap is known in the literature to be linked with depression. It causes psychological stress and suffering. Now, pain is something that is inevitable. It's a part of being human. We're all going to experience pain. But when we feel hopeless to actually fix it, that is by definition suffering. So we're all going to feel pain. And what we really need are the tools and the resources to be able to manage that pain healthy and not become so fixated to it that we're creating suffering or hopelessness that we're just like never going to do this. So I think to answer that question, yes, we can crush ourselves under our goals, but I don't think it's the goal that's crushing us as much as it is the lack of clarity, as much as it is the, I guess, lack of a plan and proper goals to achieve that. So we can't just have a goal to get a six pack and be this or that, or to build this, oh, this year I'm going to have this $3 million practice or whatever. Because if we don't have a plan to actually close that reality gap or the skills to close that reality gap, then it's not going to close. So understanding that closing your reality gap it's going to require new level skills. What you've done this far in your life has got you to where you are. But if you want to get somewhere else, you're going to have to learn new ways of doing things or new skills along the way to be able to close that, and actually having a plan in place. I think closing a reality gap, achieving those big goals, create something what I call the fulfillment paradox. Now, I made this up like on my own, but it's basically, I feel like it's this idea that in psychology, we know a reality gap causes pain and suffering, especially if we don't know how to fix it. But in order to feel fulfilled, we have to grow as a person. Like, you have to grow as a person, which means you have to have a reality gap to close. So they're really two sides of the same coin. So if you're wanting to feel fulfilled in your life, you're going to have a reality gap. So not having goals or not having these big visions or dreams that are real for you, not for other people, but for you, like this is important to you, not having that goal in the first place is going to eliminate your ability for fulfillment right there. So we need to have this reality gap, but we need to know how to properly close it. And I think what that leads to is really how to set proper goals. So how to have the tools to close it would be, one of my favorite tools is reframing our goals. So if you have a emotional goal or an outcome goal, like I just want to stop feeling so stressed all the time. That's an emotional goal. Or I'm so tired. I just want to feel like I have more energy. Or I just want to feel happy. I just want to feel like there's more meaning to my life. Or I want my practice to make $4 million. Like I this is what I want to happen. Or I want this outcome or this health outcome. Those are emotional and outcome goals. And what we need to realize is that we can't control ultimately our thoughts and emotions. Like they just happen. We're a biological being and we can acknowledge them, but we can't really control them.
Sure.
That's my belief and the current literature belief. I'm not going to say it's fact for sure, but the other thing is we can't control the outcome. Like we can't guarantee that we are going to get a six pack or that we're going to get $4 million practice or whatever. All we can do is set goals that increase the probability of growing my practice to $4 million or increase the probability of getting the physique that I really want for myself. And so that requires reframing our goals from emotional goals and outcome goals to behavioral goals. I need to do X, Y, or Z, or I have a goal to do this. And it's all about the action and the behavior that's going to create that goal. And in doing so, that's what's going to create that momentum, the motivation. It's going to actually create passion, and it's going to start to create fulfillment in the journey, in the process of it all. But yeah, we could go on this question for hours because there's just so much to it. But that would be like how I would, I guess, bring up like the fact that yes, we can crush ourselves under our goals, but we don't want to sell ourselves short or not have the right goals. So really knowing what your goals are for you and not someone else's goals, like you had said, is key. But then also having the proper tools to be able to close our reality gap through behaviors rather than those outcome and emotional goals.
I just love thinking about that in my mind, closing that reality gap. Like it's a great concept to hold on to and be like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me, instead of just get to your goal, whatever that is. Like thinking about what is the reality of what it takes for me to close that gap to my end. Hey docs, let's talk about Smile Suite, because it's not just another scheduling system. It's a game changer in the world of new patient management. And as a proud Smile Suite partner, I've witnessed the incredible impact it has on practices of all sizes. Smile Suite means your new patient calls and web leads are expertly handled 7 days a week, even during nights and weekends. And they offer top-notch customizable presentation software and seamless post-consultation follow-up. It's like having a secret weapon for your practice's success. Curious? Dive into the revolution at GetSmileSuite.com. And don't forget to mention Hey Docs to unlock some extra goodies. Elevate your practice with Smile Suite, because every smile deserves a suite of excellence. Hey docs, let's talk about consumer experience for a minute, specifically the kind of experience where you purchase an item or a service that you've been excited about, only to be let down or disappointed by the actual product or experience. Not a good way to start a relationship. That's why relationships are so highly valued at GC Orthodontics, because they are truly dedicated to the orthodontic specialty. GC Orthodontics is a leading provider of TOMI orthodontic appliances, quality products that have serviced the orthodontic community for well over 50 years. They are focused on providing total solutions that include both digital and analog orthodontic treatment modalities, like brackets, indirect bonding, and clear aligners. It's time to build a long-term relationship with a company that is dedicated to delivering total solutions to your practice. Visit GC Orthodontics at www.gcamerica.com/Jill Allen and see why countless leading clinics have made the switch. You said something as you were speaking. You talked about passion a little bit, and I don't necessarily think that we always relate passions and goals, and they may not be one and the same thing. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that. Because I know, like, when I think about my business goals for my business and where I'm going, I don't necessarily always think about it in correlation to a passion. And sometimes I personally think I do a lot of focusing on business goals and let my passion for what makes me really happy as a person, for what makes me really happy in doing life, I almost feel like I have to let that part go in order to be able to really focus on my goals. It's almost like buckle down, Jill, and just do it type of a thing. And I'm wondering if you've got some thoughts on that and what you think about, do they correlate? Do they not? Can they be in tandem? How does that work?
Yeah, I do think they correlate. I feel like passion, by definition, is basically having a compelling emotion, like towards something. And I think what a lot of people think is that I have to wait for passion to strike me to know what I like, to take action. Or they think that I have to go out and find my passion. I don't know what it is. I have too many interests and I don't know nothing really, I'm not emotionally compelled by anything. I don't know. Or they just feel like they don't know what their passion is. They can't find it. And I think what we can glean from the research is that passion is actually something that is created out of action. So we create our passions. Yes, to an extent, there's things you're going to be drawn to and things I'm going to be drawn to that are going to be more in line with the person who I am. But in the end, we create our passions through our actions, and we create our motivation through our actions. If we wait for ourselves to feel motivated, we're not going to take action. We have to take action, create motivation, create passion over time. And when it comes to setting goals, I feel like it's really about understanding what life you want to create for yourself, and having a little bit more clarity on this
Mm-hmm.
is the life I want to create for myself. This is what that wheel of life looks like for me. And these goals that I want for myself, they're in line with that. And then trying different things to find out maybe what are the things that give you the most passion. Also, to add on that, I think that a lot of people think that a passion, we're so focused on high productivity that it's like, oh, I can't bother with that because it's not producing some kind of outcome like earning money or like a side hustle or something like that. And so they basically start eliminating all the little things out of their life that actually are really meaningful for them in lieu of being a more productive person.
Oh,
And we can't do that. We have to identify the things we like and make sure that we're actually doing those things and acknowledge that passion is, it's really, let me think on that for a second. Like passion, if we, like I said before, if we wait for passion to strike us, like we're going to be waiting forever. So we need to try
mm-hmm.
different things, get out there, do different things, and actually see what resonates with our emotions, and then actually take action in it to do that.
I really appreciate your insight into this, and especially with you saying sometimes we, again, a lot of us are overachievers, and when you're an entrepreneur, you're just constantly going, and we tend to just eliminate those little things that bring us joy, and those little things that actually make us want to do the things that our goals are set for. So I appreciate that, and I can definitely say too, sometimes you don't even realize. I'll give an example here. I have never been great in the kitchen. Anybody who knows me personally knows that my sister's a rock star, and I was like, no joke, the girl that failed out of home ec when home ec used to be in school. But I had this goal this year to learn to bake bread, and not only just bread, but learn to make sourdough bread. And it is so funny because, as like, you're like, Jill, what does that have to do with business? What I wanted to do was just do something for myself that wasn't necessarily business related. Now, did I take the business approach? Yes. Do I have a notebook on every single time I bake a loaf of bread? Yes. And what I did and how I did it and what worked and what didn't work. Can I get that out of my head? No. But what's been really fun, and I'm finding maybe I'm nurturing a little passion here with this, is it's like, oh, I did this and I left my lid on a little bit longer, or I did this just a little bit different. And it's fun and exciting, and it makes me want to try, ooh, maybe I could put some herbs in this bread next time. And I know that sounds so silly, but yet it's also very, I don't know, cathartic, or like, it's fun, but it's also fun to feel a little spark of, again, am I passionate about making sourdough? Well, I don't know, but it's been a fun thing that I'm doing just for me. That is, I don't know. I felt that kind of has to do with a little bit of that passion and goals
Yeah,
type of a
no, I
thing.
love that. I think that you brought something up, I think that's really profound, which is that passion is not an outcome. It's not the bread, it's the process. It's the creativity, it's the growth, the growing in the process, it's the action. And you're creating passion through the action of actually doing that. And so it's really about the learning and the challenge and like getting the data. Data is really powerful when we like can keep that baking notebook and get the data of what we did last time, what worked, what didn't work, and just constantly doing that. That's how we start to create that spark. And we can approach our other goals that way in life, and any passion. You can create your passion in anything, really, as long as
Mm-hmm.
we have a direction, a vision, but most importantly, an action towards it.
Yeah. So what do you think blocks people from, I don't know, actually doing what they need to do to get the results they want in life?
Yes. I feel like my first like thought response would just be like one of the things would be fear, obviously. But my deep answer to that, which I'll unpack, would be the fact that we're obeying our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're obeying our feelings, we're basically living a life of comfort. We're living a life basically just doing the things that are distracting us from the things that we perceive as difficult or challenging. And we end up creating the life that maybe we don't want for ourselves. And we're like holding that reality gap open. Action is going to eliminate fear and create motivation. Inaction actually fuels fear, and it fuels like complacency and lack of motivation, and really just the feeling of more hopelessness and being stuck. So to unpack that a little bit, first, there was one Mel Robbins. I don't know if you've heard of her.
Yep.
I just saw something she talked about the other day. It touched on something I've studied for a really long time now, but she said it in a different way. And I was like, that's really brilliant. It was that our goals are designed and created in our prefrontal cortex. They are something that we use our higher function executive skills and we decide this is going to be our goal. But our decisions are something that we do based on our feelings. This is what I feel like. And that's the problem, is that we have this goal, but we have this like older reptilian brain that doesn't feel like doing things, that wants to conserve energy, that wants to be safe, and whether that's real safety or perceived safety. And so we end up basically not doing what we set out for ourselves, or what goals we set for ourselves, because we want to feel that way. And so I really like that analogy, because it was like a really brilliant way to describe like my way of describing it, which is like really long and in depth. but basically Dr. Russ Harris, he's a psychologist that kind of founded this concept called choice point, and it's part of ACT, which is acceptance commitment therapy. I've looked into many different types of therapy. I've studied them and been certified in many different branches of it, but there's cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, and then acceptance commitment therapy is really a form of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is that we get fused to our cognitions. And what that means is that we have this thought, and our thoughts and reality like get so tangled up that we can't differentiate reality from our thoughts. So a lot of suffering in our life results from getting fused to our thought so deeply that it's really considered like a disorder at this point, where we're so cognitively fused to it that we can't unhook ourselves from it. And so what happens in this model, I'll explain, is basically on the bottom we have the cognitions, which would be like our feelings, our emotions, our urges, our physical sensations, and we have these thoughts. And then what happens is we get hooked by that thought. And this is a whole branch of psychology. It's super nerdy. It's called functional contextualism. It basically says that every behavior starts with an antecedent, with a thought that triggers it. And so we have these thoughts, and what we do is we can either go one way or the other way. So one way that we go is we do what Russ Harris describes as we do away moves, or we do things that are moving us away from the life we want for ourselves. We sit on the couch, we scroll through our social media or maybe do a work post, or maybe read emails, or maybe just, if you're really addicted, maybe just flip around from app to app and do nothing. And we might watch TV, we might eat junk food, we might go running, we might do all these things that are really just like coping mechanisms of that thought or that trigger. And then on the other hand, you have all of your values, which are things that are really important to you. Your values might be like your health, your fitness, your children, your spouse, spending time with them. But we get fused by this thought, and we end up doing the away moves all the time, rather than unhooking ourselves and doing the value-based action. And what Mel Robbins basically said so eloquently and in short was that the key to happiness and fulfillment and actually creating the life you want is doing the things that you say you're going to do and following your values even when you don't feel like it. And basically, if you don't feel like it, it's because you're hooked, basically. You're like, I'm tired of physical sensation, or, oh, work was so stressful. And you're just like ruminating. Now, these are all behaviors.
Sure.
And keep in mind that worry is a behavior. like ruminating is a behavior. Those are not like emotions necessarily. They're actually behaviors.
Huh.
So if we're worrying, and what do we know about behavior is that all behavior, we're motivated to do it because it serves us in some way. It get basically. So there's a reason we're worrying. We're using worry as some kind of fuel, or there's a reason we're ruminating, and we're basically distracting ourselves or avoiding all of the things we should be doing. And so I think what really stops us from creating the life we really want for ourselves is actually just like thinking about it too much. Like problems live in
Sure.
our head, solutions are in our actions. We just need to act in the way that is our higher self and develop our brain and differentiate our prefrontal cortex from our emotions. And to be able to do that is using this kind of choice point.
Yeah, I love that. And I've got to think that this totally plays into happiness, right? And how we are in our lives, whether we're choosing happiness or letting it happen to us. I've got to believe that this directly plays into that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think happiness is, according to Adlerian psychology, the definition of feeling happy is just the feeling of contribution. Happiness isn't necessarily something we're meant to experience all the time. Joy is a choice, and we can like bring it up from within. But happiness is really more of a reaction or response to an external event or a process of feeling like we're contributing in life. And if you're contributing towards your future self, if you're contributing towards things that are important to you and your actual values, you will always feel better from doing that and happier than if you choose comfort and avoidance and maybe other distractions.
Sure. Ah, such good information, Robert. I am just like eating this all up. I just don't want this podcast to end. It's just such good information. So I know we are going to have to start wrapping it up here. And I just had one more thought before we completely wrap it up. And you've talked about goals and passion and how we're choosing to do life and even a little sprinkle in of happiness as well. But I'm kind of curious if you could just finish us up with, if you could give some doctors out there listening, because I'm sure this has touched a lot of people and they're like, oh, this is probably exactly what I needed to hear, or maybe I need to unpack this a little bit more, just do some self reflection. But I think one of the things that is so hard for all of us is to really learn to take care of ourselves and really creating the time to be with the people that are important to us, to take the time to really take care of ourselves. And I'm wondering if you could just finish us up with some tips on what you think we could take away to help, along with us setting our goals and some of those things, the coping components of that. Maybe just also remembering that we have to take care of ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a common thing I encounter with a lot of my clients. I wish I had more time. I want more time with my family. I wish I had more time to grow my business or think even to that sort. Time is very emotional. The reality is we all have the same amount of time. Oftentimes we have a lot of time that we just think we don't have. So I think one tip to really getting more time is just accepting that you have the same amount of time as everyone and actually like just doing the things that you want to do rather than wasting time thinking about it. The
Mm.
biggest thing with time, I think, is boundaries, really. And that is that when we're at work, if we're like, oh, I want to be at home, I want to be with my kids, and or something stressful happens, you're just like, why am I doing this? Then you're basically like not fulfilling yourself in any way because you're not like living towards your values at work. So what's important for me at work? What has to happen for me to be happy at work? We're at work, we need to connect with those things and we need to be that person and be present in that moment and not be distracting ourselves with all of the things outside of work. And when we're at home, We need to be present with whatever our values are. If that is like cooking healthy meals, spending time with your partner, like being with the kids, playing with them, having more energy at home. But it really comes down to boundaries, because if we're not allowing ourselves those things, then it's really a boundary problem. We think of boundaries a lot with the in-laws or other people in our life, not necessarily with ourselves. But that is really, I think, one of the most common issues with people who feel like there's just no time and they don't even have time to be with their kids.
Mm-hmm.
Really being fully present and like turning everything off is really the key to like feeling like you have more time. Obviously, there's strategy involved. I think the other tool with that strategy would be to start eliminating things. Like we always add things onto our plate to be more productive or to do a lot of different things. But the best thing we can do is remove the things that are actually like lesser goals in our life. Do we really want to open the coffee shop and also build this other like practice and then do this other little study club thing and then do this and then do that? Are those really the most important fulfilling things in your life? Like we need to go through, and if we want to get more time, we need to start eliminating the things that actually aren't moving us in the direction we want for ourselves.
Sure.
Those would be, I'd say, the most powerful tools would be eliminating our lesser goals and acknowledging that we do have a lot of time and that a lot of that time is violated by our own lack of boundaries with ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
we get home with the kids and we just sit on the couch and we are stressed, burnt out, thinking about work. That's a boundary issue. And if we want to feel more energy and we want to feel more present, the only way to short circuit that is to just act, like to behave that way. And that's really the foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy, is that when you act like the person who you want to become, you actually become that person. And in the research, we could even change our personality. Like introverts, you're
Mm-hmm.
not stuck introvert, extroverts, not stuck extrovert. Like we can change who we are through these practices of deciding who our best self is, taking action, showing up as that person, even when it feels like hard or even when we don't feel like it. But yeah, good question though.
Yeah, yeah. What a great way to finish us up here. So, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, learn more about what you're doing, maybe even do some sessions with you, how should they do that?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's www.ortholifecoach.com. And on that website, it just spells out a little bit of what is the coaching process like. And on there, you can also reach me. There's a contact link that will email me directly, or you can email at info@ortholifecoach.com. And we really just set up like a discovery call. Coaching is something that personally I really value. So I've always had my own coach in addition to coaching others, because I'm my best version of myself when I have that accountability, when I have someone to push me more than I'm going to push
Mhm.
myself. And so the first thing we do during that discovery call is really just decide, is coaching really what I need right now in my life, and just determine if it's the right fit. And then we come up with a plan. We go through that work-life audit and we come up with a strategic plan, and we start to create the life that you want for yourself, basically one session at a time, through some of the principles that we talked about today, but a lot others as well.
Sure, that's great. Robert, it has been a joy having you on the show once again. And I know that this is probably going to be one of those where people listen and re-listen, because there was just so many pearls that you gave us. So as we finish up, just like the last time, I always like to finish us
Yes.
up with the speed round. Are you ready for speed round number 2?
Yes. Bring it.
All right, here we go. Describe your style in one word.
Empowering.
Ooh,
Or
like that.
Pacific Northwest, if I clothing wise.
All right. What are you listening to or watching right now?
What am I listening to right now? Oh, I'm listening to the Elon Musk biography. Really interesting, by the way.
Ah, great,
Yes.
great. Anything you do just for you?
I am obsessed with my hot tub. I go in basically every day for the last 7 years, every morning, like at it's dark, just look up at the sky, at the stars,
Oh.
and just spend some me time before I start my day.
How about a hidden talent?
I'd say astrophotography is something new that I've always been interested, but I recently started, and I feel like I have a little gift for it. It's been
Oh,
really fun.
you for sure do. Every time you post a picture out there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So you definitely have a talent for
There's
sure.
more coming. I have some I'm in a process this weekend, the Rosette Nebula and the Orion Nebula. So I'm
Oh,
going to
cool.
I'm working on those ones.
Yes, yours is when I'm scrolling, when I'm doom scrolling. I love to come across yours because I'm like, oh, this is like Zen. It's just beautiful. And then to finish us up, a big, hairy, audacious goal.
I really want to impact 10 million lives by helping them create the best life for themselves.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thanks again for being on Hey Docs. Again, just a great episode. And I know that our listeners are going to get a lot out of it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Jill, thank you.
Okay.